Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to our animation production data exchange with vendors talk. My name is Karyn Buczek Monschein and I am the VP of Animation Technology at Paramount Animation. And today we're going to hear from Patrick Keeking. He is the Central Supervisor at Paramount Animation working on the upcoming film Tiger's Apprentice. We have Bo Casey. He is a technical director at Paramount Animation. We have Andrew Tidcombe, our principal technical director at Paramount Animation. We have Tiffany Yen, a technical director at Paramount Animation. And we have Bijoy Gadapati, who's our senior lead technical director at Paramount Animation. And he's gonna kick us off. So I'm gonna share my screen and then hand over the mic to Bijoy. Let me just start this. All right, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our talk regarding data exchange in our animation productions. Here at Paramount Animation, we primarily deal with projects involving feature animation. We have multiple projects going on concurrently. We deal with multiple vendors on each of these projects, and we needed to come up with a way to efficiently exchange data with these multiple vendors. I'm showing a couple of projects here. One is Tiger's Apprentice, which is deep in production, and Under the Boardwalk, which we just wrapped. Tiger's Apprentice, for example, deals with multiple vendors around the globe across different timelines. So we needed a way to exchange data, which is vendor agnostic and project agnostic. So in our studio, we kind of established a common pipeline that is shared across projects. But the next step in the evolution was to come up with a way to exchange data with different vendors. And this is the talk that covers that. I will be going over a bird's eye view, and my peers will deep dive into it a little bit further. So we need to deal with data that are not just scene files, but also media, cut information that goes to editorial, playlists that we use for reviews, notes and reports and such across vendors and internally with our productions. We want to do this with minimal human intervention, as much automation as possible. Also, lots of notifications along the way, where the package is, where it's being staged, unpacked, lots of email notifications along the way, and also reports that get generated based on the data type. We also are using ShotGrid to track all these deliveries. We record these deliveries in ShotGrid and can be looked up by the productions, and they organize these deliveries and create their own dashboards and such. And we wanted these deliveries to be smart and efficient in the sense that if something was already sent, it's cached and avoid redeliveries and such. Next slide, please. So we started on this journey about 3 years ago, realizing that we need something which is going to save us a lot of time down the road. So about 3 years ago, we were working on a couple of projects back then, SpongeBob, Sponge on the Run, and Rumble. So during those projects, we were exchanging data, but it was more geared per project and per vendor, custom data, and a lot of manual intervention was required. We were packaging data based on a certain need at that moment for that project and based on data type. And also all these packages required a lot of human intervention, manually confirming deliveries, pre-packaging, all that kind of stuff, pre-flight checks being performed by humans instead of machine. And also the packages were dependent on naming conventions that we were using and that the vendor and partner studios were using. And at that time, we didn't have much automation. and a lot of manual recording of all these deliveries using spreadsheets and such. So we didn't have short grid in place as well. And there was some possibilities of inefficient and repeat deliveries. Next slide, please. So currently, what's in place, like I mentioned, this is just a bird's eye view of what we are doing right now on a per project, per vendor basis, trying to get as much commonality with our deliveries as possible. All these data exchanges can be configurable on a per vendor and per project basis. We also can configure the type of transfer service we're using. For example, right now it's Aspera. We can configure it for Media Shuttle or any other transfer service. Each of these packages is manifest driven in the sense that when we are packaging, we have a manifest file that defines what's in the package. Basically, this manifest is a low-level JSON text kind of a file that informs us of what the contents of the package are. And we share the formatting of this manifest with our vendors, which basically the formatting of this manifest allows us to trigger certain processes, create tools around these processes. Automation is possible because of how this manifest is organized, custom to our internal pipeline. And in addition to automation, it also sorts the data, associates all the data relations with our shots, sequences, or references, or any other relationships. And we do a lot of notifications along the way at every step. Emails get notified to custom email lists and recipients that need to know about certain data types or departments. And we are tracking all these deliveries in Shotgun, and production can use this information to generate reports and such with that information. And we have, in addition to ShotGrid, we use another database that kind of tracks files on an individual basis. So we can be more efficient when we are packaging and avoid redeliveries. So the manifest, so we have Tiffany, who will be discussing the manifest creation and its content in detail. Next.
Thanks, Vjoy. All right, package manifest. So the package manifest is the data that gets passed to and from vendors, and all of this is contained in a JSON file. Why do we choose JSON? JSON is pretty universally accepted, and it has a hierarchical structure, and it's also relatively human readable. So it's easy to edit with a text editor. This JSON file contains delivery information and content metadata. One benefit to the package manifest system is that we are not file name dependent, so vendors can name files whatever they want, and they get renamed on our side. This does require some initial development on both sides because we're having vendors adhere to this specific schema. But I like to think of it as an upfront investment to save a lot of time down the line. This package manifest is used by both our packaging and ingestion tools, and it's the key to automation. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. So the hierarchy of the JSON file matches Paramount Animation's file structure, but we do have a metadata option to mimic the vendor file structure on our side using symlinks. It's pretty flexible. We're able to support deliveries to and from multiple vendors across different shows, but also multiple vendors on one show. It's also easy to adjust different content types within the same delivery because we have for content type metadata and for content type ingestion processes. Next slide. Yeah, so the different content types we have are assets, shot movies, shot images, reference movies, and reference images. Our most common content types are assets and shot movies. And we've divided movies and images into different categories so that we can configure different ingestion processes for different kinds of movies. For example, shot movies, we ingest those on our side and put them into the proper location. And then reference movies are just context movies, so they all get put into one location for production to look at. Next slide, please. So this is an example of a standard manifest. Every manifest will have this data. We have delivery details, so that'll tell you information about who sent this package, the show title, email list, package title. All this is helpful for tracking. And then the important part is having the to department, because that'll dictate which ingestion process is used. And then next slide, please. So this is an example for shot movies, and you can see the JSON structure also. It matches our file structure. We have sequence name, shot name, department name, and the file list will list each file and with its accompanying metadata. Just want to highlight a couple different metadata options. We have file path, so that would be the relative file path, and then the shot start frame that also gets baked into the movies on ingestion. We have version for the vendor version, and then the vendor file path that I mentioned before, so that we can create symlinks on our side. And if we're doing stereo, the view will allow us to see if this is a left eye, right eye, or mono movie. And then we also have status, and that will get burned into the movie on ingestion, and it also updates the tasks in Shotgun. Next slide. This next example is for assets. So it would be possible to see both a previous example and this current example within the same manifest. Once again, the structure of the JSON matches the file structure of our asset library. We have the asset type, asset name, asset version, variant, LOD, and representation. Something new here is the vendor data. That's a generic metadata option that vendors can put whatever information they need to add there, and that also gets attached to the assets on our asset library on ingestion. Once again, we have the optional vendor file path and the relative file path. I'm going to pass it on to Andrew so he can talk about some of our delivery tools.
Thank you, Tiffany. So the whole system is all about manifests, but no one wants to actually look at the manifest or create the manifest. So we need to build tools around creating and reading and packaging and all that kind of stuff. Next slide, please. The first tool that we created was this tool called DPAD, which stands for Data Packaging and Delivery Tool. It's a user interface that any team member can use, production people, artists, supervisors, and it allows you to take any file of any type, throw it into this package, and then process it and send it off for delivery. It's kind of built to be as user-friendly as it can be, although because it does so much, we're a little bit shy on space on the screen. But you're basically throwing things into this bin and then defining who it's going to go to on the other side, and click execute to send it off. Next slide, please. The tool functions basically are create a JSON manifest from all of the items that have been added in, package everything, including that manifest file, into a tar, and then upload that to Aspera for delivery to the receiving vendor. We add all the delivery details to Shotgun, everything about the delivery, including the contents of the delivery. We send email notifications, lots of notifications, and we record the delivery contents in Shotgun. The UI makes things hopefully simple for the user. Loading in various data types into the package are simplified. For instance, when you want to load in all of the assets for a shot, it does that automatically. That can also be loaded based on a Maya scene file. It will also load movies from RV playlists. So you can just simply drag and drop a playlist in there, and it will detect all the movies, load them in. And then once you have the movies loaded in, if you want to include the Maya files that are associated with that and the assets associated with those, you simply click a menu item to add those additional items in there. For sending editorial publishes, because some of our editorial publish files are scattered amongst our directories, the tool automatically gathers them together and puts them into the package based on which version you want to choose. Some of the predefined delivery options are automatic package titling. Everyone likes to have the uniform package naming that shows up in email and shows up in Shotgun and everything. So that's automatic. Again, trying to remove some of the human errors that might be involved. And then show vendor mailing lists. So for each vendor that might be working on with us on a show, we keep mailing lists for each department generally, so that when the user's sending something to the art department at a specific studio, they simply select that mailing list and it's all predefined for them. So the UI is really geared around just making things streamlined, simple, and easy for the users. Next slide, please. Coming back from our vendors, our partners, we use a tool called DIRT, which stands for Data Ingestion and Reception Tool. It is, of course, its goal is to automatically process the delivery package coming in, and it works off of the JSON manifest file, of course, but in conjunction with a per show configuration, which is a JSON file in addition. The JSON file tells the DIRT tool how it's going to process each one of the different types of files depending on department and content type. So the steps that it goes through when it gets run is a pre-flight inspection. We want to make sure that the files coming in are good and the data coming in is all good before we actually bring it into our pipeline. So the pre-flight inspection looks for missing files, incorrect and missing manifest metadata, incorrect movie frame ranges. A lot of that stuff happens as either intentionally on the vendor's side or unintentionally, where even start frames of movies coming in change. So we want to be aware of that and pass that information along, or go back to the vendor and say, we need a fix for that. After it's passed the check, it copies and renames the files to the pipeline locations from a staging area. We do rename a good portion of our files. These are primarily the shot movies and images, not so much the reference stuff, so that it comes into our pipeline with names and locations that the rest of our pipeline tools know how to function on. So it's a big part of it conforming to that. We add additional burn-in information into our movies before we send them on. We register every delivery in Shotgun, create versions of the media in Shotgun, create delivery playlists in Shotgun, and Patrick will speak about how that's valuable. And we send, of course, email notification. And then optionally, if desired, we can send the movies that are incoming from the vendor onto our editorial department. So the goal there being that, especially with vendors from all over the world, we get overnight deliveries. By the time the editorial staff comes in the morning, the delivery has been processed and the movies are ready and in a bin ready for them to import into the Avid. Next file, please. Page. So in addition to the manifest that comes in, of course, there's that the per show configuration. So it's processing by department. So we choose what animation movies or animation images are going to do. We choose what art images and movies are going to do. and then per content type. So we have, as Tiffany mentioned, everything separated out into different content types so that we can handle them again specifically as the show desires. Processing options include things like automatic or manual ingestion. So we can choose for a particular department, we want it to go straight through automatically, or we want human intervention. We always want to maintain that sort of option of manual control. Movie burn-ins and a variety of different burn-ins can be chosen and set up for each movie that goes in, whether or not it goes on to editorial, and of course, whether or not there is notification and to whom notification gets sent. Lots of notifications. Next slide, please. But in the case where we don't pass the pre-flight check, the process will stop. And of course, we send notification, but to the production staff saying that this delivery didn't pass the checks, so it needs human intervention. That's when the production person in general doesn't open up the JSON manifest file or whatever. They open up the DIRT UI, and the DIRT UI gives them hopefully all the information they need in order to identify what the problems are and correct them for executing the ingestion. So everything is kind of color coded, and we try to make it easier for the person running it to execute those fixes. Additional functions that can be executed, you can choose at that time to do various things like turn burn-ins on and off, add barcode at the bottom of the movie to identify it, deliver to editorial or not, those sorts of things. So it's same thing as the automated DIRT, but now humans can get involved and make some more choices. Next slide, please. So the whole thing here is that in addition to the manifest being the core of this, the driver of it all, we do need tools on both sides of this cloud wall, both on our side at Paramount and at each one of our vendors, to do the processes of packaging up the deliveries and ingesting the deliveries from us. And the ingestion is really the sort of the important one, because that's the providing of the automation and removing a lot of the laborious stuff. So that ends my section, and now we can move on to Bo.
Thank you, Andrew, for that great description of the tools used for packaging and unpackaging data deliveries at Paramount. So I'm going to talk about automated data ingest. Initially, projects start out as mostly manual, and as we work with the vendor to help them integrate the specification into their process, it becomes more automated. As the show matures, the percentage of automated ingests increase, along with the amount of data that needs to be processed. On our most recent project, Under the Boardwalk, fully automated ingest handled over 95% of the terabytes of final delivery packages. Automation allows our global network of vendors to deliver from any time zone and have inbound packages available to production. For this whole system to work, we do need partner studio cooperation. The system relies on the partner studio to include a manifest file with their delivery packages. One incentive for the partner studio is that they could also reap the efficiency gained by automation of the data exchange process. Our choice of products and technologies was influenced by what resources were available to us on our networks. Similarly, other studios could implement this type of system based on their local network topology and resources. Next slide, please. At the very base layer of the automation technology stack is virtualization, and our product of choice in that category would be VMware. VMware is particularly good since most of these processes are IO bound, and using a virtual instance machine allows us to position those nodes inside the data center for optimal data transfer rates. Other technologies that could provide similar virtualization include VirtualBox, Red Hat, Hyper-V, Oracle, and Citrix. On the operating system level, we went with CentOS. Our team members come from animation and VFX backgrounds, so that's probably the biggest influence for choosing CentOS. You could implement the same type of system with either Windows, Macintosh, or other versions of Linux. Next slide, please. On the transport layer of the technology stack, we went with Aspera. This was because of our information security team's recommendations. Other technologies that could be used to transport media files include Signet Media Shuttle. Process orchestration is one category that there's probably the widest variety of options. Our team chose Jenkins because of the ease of configurability and flexibility. On the free and open source category, you might choose OpenQ or Deadline if those are available. Commercial products such as Tractor or Cube could also be good options. And our team believes that even technologies such as Kubernetes and Mesos could be used for process orchestration. At the application layer of the technology stack, our team chose Python. It's a common language for technical directors in the industry. Other good choices include C++, Golang, Rust, or if your facility is particularly Mac-centric, you might want to look into Swift. At the database level of the stack, we went with Postgres. MongoDB could be another good choice as well, Elasticsearch or SQLite. For production tracking, we went with ShotGrid. Ftrack would be another good option for tracking purposes. Now let's take a look at the entire technology stack together. So these are the various software categories and technologies that we use for automated data processing of inbound delivery packages at Paramount Pictures. Now to talk more about the production tracking with ShotGrid, I'll turn things over to Patrick.
Thank you, Bo, and Andrew, and Tiff, and Vjoy. As a production person, I'm forever grateful for you putting up with all of my Jira tickets. Yeah, if we want to talk about the integration with all this information into Shotgun, one of the biggest things has been deliveries in general. In the early days, like Vjoy mentioned, a lot of it was manual, and I was one of those people manually ingesting things using the Dirt tool that Andrew showed that is now, for the most part, all automated. And one of the issues back then was a lot of times if you tried to run a manifest or if you tried to do certain things, you didn't really have a way to understand what went wrong. And with the integration of putting all the data into Shotgun, and like Andrew mentioned, the pre-flight check, we have some information right here in our deliveries page that immediately cues you to something's amiss, along with, as this is going to sound shocking, notification emails. On this page, what we're looking at right now, you can see on the right-hand side, there's a delivery status column, and that has a present, which is just a ingested item correctly, a red rectangle, which means an item that has tried to ingest but has failed, and thus it failed the pre-flight check and has sent an email. And then also, obviously, on this delivery page, it gives you the warning via that icon. And then the orange snowflake. And the orange snowflake is saying this item has been downloaded. It has not yet been ingested. And that can also be a cue for if this was downloaded 6 hours ago and it's still an orange snowflake, that's also something like maybe something somehow slipped through the cracks, but it's still another way to tell us there's something wrong here. And any metadata, not surprisingly, that they put into these manifests that they send to us in one way, shape, or form can show up here in Shotgun. And why don't we take a look at a delivery on the next page? I'll go into a little more detail about that. So what you see here is pretty basic delivery. It's pretty standard for what we've seen on the show. In the description area is the message they've sent us, which also comes in their email, but they put it into their manifest as well. So you could theoretically, without even looking at emails, get all your messages, get all of your deliveries all through Shotgun. At the top, you'll see the versions that have been ingested along with the associated shots. And the right side, there's a delivery type, FX, which I will get to in a moment, that affects our playlist types as well. And speaking of which, on the right-hand side, you can see the playlist that is generated from this delivery. And to talk a little bit more about playlists, why don't we jump to the next page? Anytime something's ingested into the system, it creates two playlist types. One's RV and one is for Shotgun. RV playlists are used primarily for us by our layout and art departments. RV is used daily as like the media viewer for layout. And then art uses it for reviewing media with color accuracy and for delivering things to editorial. And like Tiff mentioned earlier about the symlinks, we also will use RV to RV sync with our vendors based on a playlist that was created by a delivery. And then also the Shotgun playlists. So almost every department uses a Shotgun playlist. It's a simple and easy way to just click on that thing and what was ingested. So that helps just give it a quick look over whenever we get something in without having to go to the server, find the files or find the folders, and just a quick, nice way to view. Also, we use Sync Sketch for a majority of our media reviewing, like cross-site, and playlists from Shotgun can be pushed into Sync Sketch with ease. You can notate on Sync Sketch and just text notes, drawings, what have you, and you can push that information back into Shotgun, which will attach to those versions, but also be viewable in the playlists that have been generated. And then one other way, if we want to jump to the next slide, another example of playlist generation is we've created certain pages and certain reports that essentially just filter our deliveries to whatever degree we need to, right? Once you have the metadata, you can, in Shotgun, you can create 100 different ways to view it. In this example we see here, this is a dashboard for a head of layout. And when a flow delivery came in for him to review, its delivery type was flow. So therefore created the playlist type flow. And this page filters for flow playlists. So he can come in the morning, he can go to his dashboard, he can see what's been delivered that day, and he can work on it, notate it, do whatever he needs to do via the playlists that already were created before I even come on. You know, the old way we did it was I would get in, I would run the ingest, and then I would manually create the playlist for him. So this has saved me personally so much time. And then there's one other thing we can do with playlists. Next slide, please. Is we can trigger the D-pad tool that Andrew showed you for delivering to our vendor. So in this just little example that I have here, we could receive some files from one vendor. It creates a playlist. We review some of them and we decide, hey, I want to send X, Y, and Z to somebody else. So then you could just select those specific versions that you want to deliver to the vendor. You can just right click and trigger the D-pad tool to open up. It will create the manifest automatically. All the files will populate, and you make your selection of email or message, and it's basically all done for you. Yeah, those were just a few things that have been really beneficial with this workflow for production.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so in the future, we really hope to share our schemas with our industry peers, and we will be encouraging participation to contribute and give us constructive feedback to improve our data exchange process. And I just wanted to thank all our partner studios who have helped us develop this, including Micros and Real Effects and DNEG. And this was a very collaborative workflow. So we wanted to thank all our partner studios. And I'm going to switch over. We're going to go to questions now. And I'm going to ask our speakers to unhide their video. All right, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
I just realized, Karyn, we mistitled this whole presentation. It should have been better notifications for a feature animated production.
There we go.
Wait, we have notifications?
We do.
Perfect. All right, so we have a few questions here. The first question that we have, do you have support for more complex structures like including file dependencies and shot breakdown inventory relations? Who would like to grab that question?
We don't have that capability at this time. But if Patrick is interested in it, then basically we're ready to do it. Because basically what we've done is we built the system around the productions that we had and the production staff and their specific needs, getting the data in there. Yeah, if he sees value in that, we would certainly add it.
I'm writing the JIRA right now.
Put in that JIRA ticket, please. All right, next question. Were there subtypes for the content types? For example, any subcategories for assets content type?
Oh, well, I'll take that on. No. One of the things that we did from the very beginning here at the Paramounts is to try and keep things simple and reduce granularity when we felt it appropriate. So no, we didn't do that. However, there isn't nothing stopping us from adding additional levels of granularity in there. But at this point, we haven't had that need.
It probably should be noted that on the assets schema, there is a variance option. And in the example provided, the variant was base, but the variant could be something else.
Next question. Did you build any tools for validating your schemas? Also, do you keep a schema version? Ever have to break backwards compatibility?
I can take that. So we shared a document with all the vendors working with Paramount, and which included the schemas, and we internally are versioning those. I mean, so far we didn't have to fall back because of any issues. It's more moving forward than going backwards with this with the vendors, because as most of you know, animation productions, they just keep chugging along. Deadlines are coming, and we just need to keep moving. So,
yeah, fortunately, our changes along the way have been small, incremental, nothing large enough that would break anything in our current systems with our manifests.
And regarding validation, I think Andrew mentioned the pre-flight check that the automated DIRT process on our side does. Vendors can also do something like that using this cross-validation with the schemas if they need to. We haven't gone down to a great level of that, but whatever pertains to our pipeline is what we are addressing at this moment.
Okay. Next question. Is the whole system modular where one can write plugins for each of those modules to provide compatibility with different storage providers, production tracking, or orchestrators, or even the schema data structures?
A little bit. I think, yeah, Bo, the specific cloud services, that's a modular element to the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. The ingest automation component is highly modular, using request sockets and TCP packets between various different systems.
Yeah. Next question. How do you manage credentials for your deliveries to different clients? Do you put passwords in ShotGrid, or is it a separate system?
Currently, or go ahead. No, go ahead, Andrew.
No. Always let Patrick go first. That's the rule.
Yeah, no. I mean, from a production standpoint, everything is retained in Shotgun within one area. So like all of our vendor deliveries per vendor are on this same page. There's no real difference needed for sending to them. Same with using the delivery tools. We can just switch between vendors and deliver all using the same credentials, assuming I'm understanding the question correctly.
Vijay, you came up with the scheme for
basically,
saving the credentials.
I mean, we are using Aspera as our blessed transport service, which is basically cleared by our content security. So anything we are sending to vendors has to go through that service. So that kind of clears the kind of data type and content we are sharing with our vendors. So it's going through a process that's approved, essentially.
And then another question. What do we all think about possibly integrating the system with Open Asset IO somehow? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, this is the kind of constructive feedback we are looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came across Open Asset IO attending SIGGRAPH this year, and yeah, we will explore that area.
Yeah, but the things like assets are one of those difficult things because what we name it within our system and the various options and levels of granularity to our assets don't necessarily match up to what a vendor will have. And also because we will be working with multiple vendors sometimes on a show. Now it's 3 parties with different variations on the theme. So the more we can use things like that to sort of coalesce it into one and make it easier to do that exchange, it certainly makes it easier for our tools then.
All right, thank you. Okay, do you see alternatives for email notifications? Like Andrew and Patrick will have. Yeah, no, go ahead,
Well,
Vijay.
Slack, right? We were going for Slack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Slack bot.
So
No, it's funny because as much as I burden Patrick with this, trying to kill email notifications and the dependence that people have on email notifications, there was no avoiding it because especially from the production side and producer types, they like to have a full inbox and be able to see action on various things happening. So it was really kind of unavoidable. And I'm not sure that we'll be able to bring that part of the group into kind of a Slack workflow and certainly not into a shotgun workflow for most of them.
During a previous iteration of the system, we did have Rocket Chat instant message notifications for certain steps.
yeah, I think too, just from a production standpoint, kind of to your point, Andrew, it's certain people like to have things retained in a certain way and done in line with everything else that they do, right? So if you're in your email 90% of the day, it's nice to have a lot of that information also in your email, not have to go to something else. I of course am open to anything.
I mean, another problem is different vendors might have different kind of messaging systems. So email was the most basic fundamental across the board.
We didn't actually show any of our various notification emails, but they are beautiful. They do include color coding and bold type. And so we try to make the most of a nice, big, lengthy email message to convey all sorts of information to the people. So I think it's going to be around for a much longer time.
Next question. Does your delivery system deal with enforcing different nomenclatures of the output files as per the client being delivered to?
No, we're primarily we're delivering it as we see it. So we do not pre-process anything in our delivery system. We process it when it comes into our pipeline. But going out of our pipeline, we generally, and Patrick and Vijay and Bo and Tiffany, correct me where I'm wrong, but nothing in our system changes any naming or it makes any conforming to vendor standards. We're asking them to take on the burden of conforming, partly because we recognized that when we're dealing with multiple vendors, we don't want to be conforming for each one of them if we're sending them the same set of data, that sort of thing. Karen, did I get that?
We do keep track of the vendor file name as well as the version number in ShotGrid. So whenever our production teams are communicating with the vendor, they have access to that information, because otherwise it could become confusing.
We found they're doing generally the same thing we're doing, which is when you receive a file, when you're going to do something with it on your end in your pipeline, you're going to create a record of that. So you can correlate between what we sent to what you actually ingested into your system. Keep that mapping handy in case you ever need it. Doesn't really happen very much.
Question. I like this one. Which these are all good questions. Sorry. Which part of the system do you think is the one that you can put more love into future iterations?
And that's not Patrick, right? Asking the question or the subject matter. Wow. I would say dirt. You know, we're once the show gets going and everything has been established with the vendor sending deliveries to us, we are able to hit something like, I think, Bo, you said 90% automation. You know, we're obviously our goal is to hit 100%. So that would definitely be an improvement. Actually, one area where we are somewhat deficient on our delivery out is dealing with art department and all of their less controlled types of things. Once we're into production, even in the previous phase, everything sort of fits into categories and is easy to package up and send along. But the art files, and there's a lot going back and forth between the two, between us and the vendors. We kind of struggle with getting that to fit into the delivery package system.
Yeah, I mean, it's a continuous evolving process. It all depends on not only across the vendors, but also internally across projects. We are trying to get a common pipeline going, which is always our goal here. And there's several things that need to happen for all shows to work the same way still.
And I think one thing, as we're spinning up another show or another two shows right now, we're going through the growing pains with vendors, getting them to learn the manifest system, to build their tools around the manifest system. So I think that we want to continue to build to be able to support them so that we can spin up shows and additional vendors faster, and not spend that time on either side growing.
I think it'd be a good addition to add natural language processing to the tracking of dialogue and story changes.
All right, I think we've come to the end of our questions. One thing we talked about internally as we were preparing for this was we mentioned, you know, this system could even be used internally. I don't know, does anyone want to speak to that kind of aspect?
Yeah, I mean, some of the efficiencies like handing off from department to department, since we kind of generalize the data that is flowing and using this format, maybe the internal publishers can benefit as well if someone wants to use this system internally to go from department to department, deliveries from department to department.
And interestingly enough, the system and the concept started out as an internal process, as some of our teams were spread out across vendor and home networks. So since we had access to the sending and receiving on both sides of the firewall, that's kind of where the concept originated.
Just double check. Yep, we've answered all the questions. So we just wanted to thank the Pipeline Conference for having us. And Thanks for listening to us. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. I actually don't know how to end this. That's the one thing we didn't practice, but I know we're right on time. So thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you all very much. That was a great presentation.
Thank
And
you.
Everybody
Thank you.
head on back to Hoover. Everybody, there's also Gather Town if you guys haven't checked out. And anybody who wants to ask more questions of our panelists, meet them there or add your questions to the Hoover chat window. Thank you guys very much.
All right, thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye.